think we wasted our time coming here, don't you?
Your question depends on me understanding what you hope to achieve by coming here.
What we hope to achieve was to meet our makers, to get answers. Why they even made us in the first place.
Why do you think your people made me?
We made you because we could.
Can you imagine how disappointing it would be for you to hear the same thing from your creator? Big things have small beginnings.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, well-known, out in deep space, or something still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting your favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep and possibly concerning love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And joining me in the Bear Cave again is Mr. Vince Tinebra. Vince, welcome back.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. I'm glad that you invited me back after the last thing that we did on Alien 1979. So this is
100%.
This should be good.
Yeah. You have become the go-to Alien expert. So for me, if I need some alien information, I know exactly who I need to go to. And that, of course, brings us to this week's movie. And actually, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a part 1 and a part 2 that directly continues off of this one because of the movies that we're going to be talking about. But the movie that we're going to be talking about this week in this part 1 episode is Prometheus, aka Alien Prometheus, from 2011, I believe.
2012, I think.
2012? Yeah, 2012.
Yeah,
So about that. Yeah, 2012. Alien Prometheus. I think this is something that a lot of people were looking forward to, especially by the fact that it was directed by Ridley Scott, the original director of the first Alien movie, where he didn't get the option, he didn't get the opportunity to direct the follow-up to that original movie. So here was his shot to go ahead and direct an Alien prequel, but also make it, more along the lines of his vision. Does that kind of lead into the reason why we have Prometheus?
Well, yeah, in a way it does. People had asked for an origin story for years. Like, how did the derelict ship get to LV-426? Why was it loaded with all those eggs? Who were those giant creatures in the cradle, the console cradle, which were incidentally much bigger in Alien than they were in Alien Prometheus. They were called the engineers in Prometheus. In Alien, it was just a big old alien that was dead. There's some callbacks to that when they're in the caves, kind of like looking for clues on who these engineers are. You'll see a couple of little Easter eggs in there from the nod back to, Alien, like, hey, this guy has his chest bursted out, and meanwhile, we don't see any of that running around there. Everything's pretty dead. With the Alien Prometheus with Ridley Scott was, okay, my bigger story is about androids. And so it became the impetus of that in the beginning when you meet the key android played by Michael Fassbender. He is David, the synthetic. And you only really find out in the next movie why he was put there, but you could figure it out kind of while you're going along with this thing. The movie's pretty much an open book, which was kind of what some of the fans clamored about, was saying, well, like, we knew this was like, where the movie was going to go, and it lost steam for me, and then the payoff wasn't what it was supposed to be. But Prometheus, looking at it as a prequel, was very well constructed. It was a beautifully filmed movie. The actors in it were great. There were some really good performances in it. There were some probably quibbles about technology, like, why is the technology so advanced if it's before Alien happened? And there's reasons for that. You don't change the technology on a UPS truck or a delivery van for as many years as you can, but scientific vessels will have the best equipment on them, right? So
Yeah.
there was a lot of people that just couldn't make that happen in their head. It was like, well, I wanted more aliens. So the story, the buildup, starts with an excursion to the stars because a scientist couple on Earth, they find matching star charts drawn on cave walls, on parchments, on 5 different continents, in 5 different time periods, in disconnected people. They would have never met each other. So they brought that information to someone who would fund what they thought was an invitation to come see who created them, because they believed that these were people that were on Earth and helped shepherd mankind to where they were. That's Mr. Wayland of Wayland Yutani Corp funds this trip.
The interesting thing is the corporation is still just the Wayland Corporation.
Yeah.
So kind of to play with the idea of like this is still taking place before the time period of Alien 1979. The way that it starts is great, and of course it's going to go off the rails, at some point.
Yeah.
But getting there is a beautiful journey.
The crew is an eclectic bunch of people, some who are very professional experts, others who are like cocky rock and roll stars in their genre. And there's a conflict there, right? Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. I didn't come along for this. I came along for something else, And then when you see that conflict start to happen, something is going to go wrong because somebody's not going to listen or pay attention to protocols. And that's exactly what happens in the beginning of this movie after they find the origin of the signal, which is a moon outside our solar system that's called LV-223. And on there, a mountain that's buried and caves and things of that nature. They build up a lot of tension in this movie because of the natural environment, which I thought was kind of cool because they were someplace that was unpredictable, yet they trusted their science enough to take risks. And in that fact, those risks are the things that kind of like, cause the problems they have along the way. And I think that's kind of like one of the most important talking points is, why did these people do the things that they did? Being biological experts and geological experts and engineers, they did stuff that would be so totally impractical and expose themselves to alien organisms, right? So that was like a big question for people, and a lot of arguments were like, no one would ever do that. It's a giant plot hole, blah, blah, blah. My feeling is, if you look at the characters, there are some very reliable characters there, and then these rogue rock stars that don't want to listen to anybody. Then why would they hire them to go on this trip? Because they did it based on their expertise and not on their personalities, which was a huge mistake.
Right. Well, and that's, I think, probably one of the interesting things when you're putting this crew together, and kind of have to fast forward through towards the end of the movie when a lot more things are revealed, like the unknown crew members that are included in this ship, in the Prometheus, that are flying along with them, that there seems to be a struggle between the people that are there to do the real science and the company that has their own agenda. And not even just a single force within the company. You've got multiple company people who have their own agendas kind of to play off of here and to try and push things in a certain way.
Wayland kind of hijacked that to find his fountain of youth. He'd up asking questions to the people that created life. He'd find a way to remedy his life physically, right? That's why they brought the hidden medical units on board and all this other stuff and everything to see what they could learn, what he could learn from them to extend his life. So whatever the company was doing, Wayland had his own agenda on top of that.
And Vickers being there as, spoilers, obviously big spoilers, as his daughter, who wants the company. She doesn't want him to succeed. She wants him to die so she can actually get the company that she's worked her life to inherit. How well she's worked or how much she's worked, we're not going to talk about that. But she feels that it's her birthright, and she can't get it if the CEO lives forever. So I'm wondering how much of the conflicting personalities and the fact that there are people on this mission who just aren't serious people, are part of that, hoping that maybe they will end up sabotaging it, not to the way that it does end up
Well, in the
being
beginning,
sabotaged.
they have that video meeting where he presents and he says, if you're seeing this now, because you have traveled so far and I'm history, I'm dead. And he says, for those of you who I selected myself, you know who I am. For those of you who were selected for the crew, but like the doctors and everything, right? It was like there was certainly a line there to separate everybody from knowing that, okay, well, he brought his own people on board and they know him right from there. And no one knew he was alive yet, right? But there was that line there created divisiveness already. There was two groups on board. The group that was going to find the origin of life and then whatever he selected people for. So that was like the first warning of a conflict right there.
Yeah. First warning of divergent interests here. And even Vickers herself, again, played very expertly by Charlize Theron, who did have input into her character, a lot more input than some of the other actors may have, in finding things that give her more agency, that give her more of a personality, of a history, of interaction with the other crew members. Charlize Theron does a great job with this, but you know that Vickers also has her own agenda here. She, like I said, she doesn't want Wayland to succeed. So she's, in a way, either ready to hurry this whole thing along so that she can get back to Earth and hopefully not find what they want to find. Or if they do find something, figure out a way to just sort of get away.
Well, she wanted to push the button several times, so to get out.
She was like, we're ready to die. Like, everybody, abort, let's abort.
Yeah. But, so there's, that's the general setup of the movie. And of course, when they go investigating and stuff and they get exposed and now they're dealing with, alien contamination, just like pretty much every the alien movie. But there were different aliens in this. There were like primordial ones that mutated with the mutagen that they got dipped in. There were pictures and scrolls on the wall that you could see likenesses of xenomorphs. So that the engineers had dealt with them at some time or created them at some time. The bursted chest open from one of the engineers that the guy mentioned. So there's a lot of alien lore that they're building into the script and trying to tie little things together. And then they have, as they're going through this and they see these ghostly images, which are basically recordings of the engineers, their last flight, running through the hallways and stuff like that. They go to this doorway where there's a chamber of these vials in it that are solid black. But when you go near them, they react like the eggs do, and they start to leak like a black fluid and stuff. So as they're in that chamber, they find the head of an engineer. And there's a storm coming. Now, the one thing about this movie, it doesn't lack action sequences. And the design of the vehicles and the spaceship and everything is very coherent, very modern looking, it's scientific. It has purpose to it. So they spent a lot of money on the set direction and the aesthetic of this movie. And it did actually well at the box office. It didn't do well with critics and with fans, but as far as alien movies go, it was one of the top producers over the original weekends of it.
Yeah, I think it the numbers I saw was for the box office figures, it made about $400 million, which is not not small potatoes, and it cost about, I think they said something like about 150 million. So it did make a profit. And for something like this where it's an R-rated film, it's part of a franchise, it's sci-fi horror, so you expect that there's going to be some attrition. It's not going to be like a worldwide blockbuster making $1 billion because it's not very family friendly.
That's one thing, yeah.
And there's still that barrier that exists. I mean, not everybody's going to go run to the new Scream movie that's coming out, even though it's so popular. It's like, yeah, but parents aren't taking their 10-year-old kids who want to see like Gabby's Dollhouse or something like
that point.
Yeah, exactly. So, for them to make a profit on this, they were going in the direction of being able to continue this storyline if they wanted to. But sticking with Prometheus and just all the stuff that happens with it. I mean, you mentioned the design. The design is gorgeous. I mean, these are beautiful state-of-the-art ships, facilities. Everybody looks pretty dang fancy. There is you could see some of the DNA in the suits with like the large helmets.
Yeah.
That kind of connects you to the original Alien 1979. But you mentioned it pretty early on. The aesthetic of everything is that it looks fancy. It looks clean. It looks new. Like, oh, wow, look at all the really great technology. This is a vessel that contains the head of the company, one of the most powerful corporations on the planet. He's not going to ride in any kind of junker. He's going to make everything look as fancy as possible. Vickers, she loves the finer things. She's got a baby grand piano in her quarters. She's got crystal and a bar, and like everything's gorgeous. And obviously the scientists themselves are going to have state-of-the-art equipment for all of this. So we're not looking at a bunch of long-haul truckers making do.
Their trucks are dirty, they're oily, they're greasy, they do mining and all that other stuff. This is a vessel of science. It has every scientific advantage on it that you could have. Well, when you're a trucker in space, you're going from point A to point B and you're sleeping most of the way. You don't really need a whole lot, I thought it was really well thought out, and the planet itself was also gorgeous. Just the design of the drifts, the rock drifts that were pointed in. It seems like a lot of alien movies have pointy, slanted rock drifts now. That's almost every one of them that do. The sand it was like a black sand. It was his eye to make these things stand off of that background and pop. So look-wise, it was great. Scare-wise, it had a couple of really frightening moments in it. And I think in this one, like where in the last one we said, well, the chest burster might have been the the ultimate scene of surprise and horror. There was something in Prometheus that was equally as gooey and icky. It's after David spikes Elizabeth's husband's water or wine, whatever it was, with alien ooze, alien goo, and they have sex. And she's barren. She can't have a baby. And all of a sudden she's pregnant. There's no help here coming because he's getting sicker. She's getting more pregnant. And the guy who did it, who would normally intervene, doesn't want to. This is his experiment.
I think the whole thing with David, I mean, he starts out creepy. I think that's one of the things that Ridley Scott did an amazing job, and Michael Fassbender as well, and bringing David to life. Ridley Scott got his point across that the synthetics have a lot more dimension to them, but they have the capacity for real cruelty, and cruelty without remorse or morality. And that's exactly what David, he's like, I'm a creator. I am going to create this. To me, it's fascinating. And, we get a little bit more of his philosophy in the second movie, but in this movie,
he becomes a creator because, and this is like the prequel, the cold opening or whatever you want to call it, to Covenant, where they go back and they show you how Wayland is talking to him. Says, you're my son, but he treats him more like a servant. And basically, David is playing the piano, and he says, well, I can only play as I'm programmed to play. I want to be able to create. Well, at somewhere along the line, before Prometheus took off, Wayland gave him that capability. And he was one of the only synthetics that had that capability, because later on, they mentioned that they turned it back and took that element out and enhanced other things to serve humans. So you have him as a rogue character there, and he is the key to everything that happens. All the questions that people have. Well, how do they know how to do this, and how do they know to do that? He says in the movie, I've studied their language. I believe I could speak to them, and I think I can run their technology. I've seen them use it. Because he watched that ghostly video playback about how to do different things and everything. Essentially, he learned basically how to operate a ship and speak their language. So he's now the key to everything that happens, good or bad, from that point on.
People forget. I mean, he's a synthetic. He's a supercomputer. He's an AI supercomputer who can figure this out, who can understand and deduce a lot of information. And he's been awake the entire trip learning Proto-Indo-European languages.
Yeah.
He has been creeping on poor Noomi Rapace's character, Elizabeth Shaw, who is ostensibly she's the main character here, but he's been creeping on her, being able to go into her dreams and see what she's dreaming about. And he's fascinated with her in a way that he's not fascinated with anybody else. Everyone else seems to be pretty disposable to him, but she's special in some way.
And let's not forget about Lawrence of Arabia. He's got a special thing.
He loves Lawrence of Arabia, which is funny.
Yeah.
He dyes his hair, changes his haircut and his mannerisms to it. Really likes Peter O'Toole a lot.
Yeah, well, evidently. He modeled himself after Peter O'Toole and Lawrence of Arabia. And I think he, in a way, he wants to be that kind of leader, rogue leader, for people. But he's not programmed for that. So the conflict in there is, I like to be like that, but I can't. So maybe I can make myself look like it and act like it, but I can't be like that.
Yeah. Well, and especially because part of his programming, part of his fascination is being able to create something, even if it's something horrific, like a xenomorph or a proto-xenomorph or something that's like that, because he wants to experiment with the black goo, which is introduced in this movie. So this is the first time that we see the black goo.
But it gets retconned later on. So as far as we're concerned, black oil in any alien movie is bad, right? So this black substance, as soon as I saw it, I said, well, that's a bad thing. It's not going to turn out good.
Don't touch it. Don't test it.
In
Don't
the
do anything with
X-Files,
it.
and I think in other movies that anytime you see the black oil, it's bad.
It's funny too that you would mention that, because that is one of the big plots of the conspiracy part of X-Files is the black goo. And when it infects people and changes their eyes black, and you're just sort of like, oh my God, this is a direct sequel to X-Files.
Who knows?
Maybe
20th Century Fox, who knows? But in any event, he was the key to the rest of the movie because he learned everything he could about the engineers' language and their symbolism and everything. There's a lot of dejection in it because did we find our creators, or there's no one here alive? There's no one to ask what we wanted to ask. So, Charlie is feeling, Elizabeth's husband is feeling we failed, and she's saying, no, this is nothing but success. So she finally gets him on her side, not knowing that David spiked his drink with the alien oil, and they have sex, and she becomes pregnant with a thing.
Thing is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And I liked and appreciated how Charlie kind of changed his tune, because I think that was one of the criticisms that I read about his character is like, oh, he turns he's so excited and then he's not excited and he's just like a big Debbie Downer afterwards. It's like, well, of course, because he was expecting to meet somebody, but instead it's just death. And it's death that's been, they look at it and they're like, they've been dead for over 2,000 years. Like, this is not, 50,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, they were traveling back and forth to Earth.
Not anymore.
They've been gone for a while for a reason, because these people are dead. Let's
poke at that for a second, Steve, because that's the big controversy. So who were the engineers exactly? Did they create us exactly? Well, what we see in the beginning of the movie is an engineer who's on the cliffside, gets dropped off by one of their giant spaceships, and drinks some of that black goo, and his body starts to fall apart, and his DNA starts to come apart, and he falls into a river, and that's where the first forms of life on, we think, is Earth starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our DNA matches their DNA, blah, 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 this other stuff. And so the 2,000-year thing has a lot to do with it, as well. This story takes place around Christmas, and Ridley Scott leans into the Christianity part into these movies. For some reason, he doesn't come right out and say it, but the imagery is there, the holiday is there. It's just it's not a Christmas movie. It's just happening, and they happen to be close to Christmas, right?
Shaw herself as a character, she's the daughter of a missionary. Just a quick cameo of Patrick Wilson, but it sets her up as she's been raised to be very much in this mindset of faith and Christianity and miracles and all of that. And that's why she's so excited the entire time, because she's like, look, there's more. We're learning so much more. There's more questions, and that makes me happy. Whereas Charlie is like,
I wanted my answers already. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my answers, and I'm just disappointed.
So the inside theory of some of the script people that have analyzed the script is that the engineers put life on Earth. Life on Earth continued to grow and mature the way it did around the time of Jesus. They are monitoring us from far away. When Jesus was killed, they felt like there's no chance that this planet will accept a gift that would be one in peace, and we need to destroy them. So that's why all that action took place. And she says these recordings and these bodies are around 2,000 years old. They were on their way to Earth to destroy us. She realizes that later in the movie because when they bring up the star chart, the target is Earth. It goes from their planet through the solar system, through the galaxy, and it points to Earth. And if you don't look at that and know that that's Earth, you'll miss it. So she realizes they're going to go destroy Earth. We need to stop them from doing it.
Because that was their plan all along. That was their plan. And what really gets me about this, and I think maybe that's part of Charlie's disappointment, is that the star charts, these are star charts you're like, oh, the origin is here. We're going to find a homeworld. We're going to find, I don't know, whatever, like a society of super peaceful super beings. But instead, it's a military, or, well, I mean, probably more like scientific. It's bioweapons. It's a
weapons of mass
ground.
destruction. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, at one point, this was used for experimentation, creation in the universe, them seeding planets, and whether Earth was the only one, maybe there were multiple ones, whatever. That's where that all came from. But in the intervening time period, it became bioweapons and a staging ground for destruction. And I don't know if you noticed this. I mean, you probably did. But the design, when you have the storm sort of starting to kick up and blowing off all the dust, the design of the dome of the big mountain that they're going under blows off, and it's a skull, but not just any skull. It's a skull that's kind of elongated and has a tail that goes down towards the back. And it looks exactly like a design that Giger or H.R. Giger had made for Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yeah.
That was going to be a Gidi Prime base of some sort, like maybe the palace, where it's just this giant round thing with the skull and the sort of like the long strand. And I was like, well, this is clearly not a place for happy experimentation anymore, even if it was at one point, which would make sense that at one point, hey, here are our creators and they're coming from like this interesting place. And okay, maybe it was for good research at one point, but not anymore.
No. So they, several of them do stupid things. Like Charlie, right away when he gets in there, he realizes he's in a place that's creating an atmosphere. They don't detect any kind of known organisms that they're in danger of, and there's clearly a mixable, breathable volume of gas in there that they can survive without their helmets. So he takes his helmet off, to everybody else's, dismay, and starts breathing, and then everybody else does it as well. So now they're able to act and talk and react without their helmets on. The reason why you do that is to expose them to deadly mutagens.
Exactly. It's like, oops, oh well.
And people are like, why would anybody do that before they did more testing and stuff like that? And I go, I don't know. I wasn't there. It's, like
we've talked a lot about the writing. This was written. It was actually originally written by John Spate. He was the initial writer on the spec script. They brought in Ridley Scott, decided to bring in Damon Lindelof, to rewrite and change the direction of the script a little bit. So they did make a lot of changes from the original John Spate script. Scott was putting the input there. Damon was rewriting it. He had just come off of Lost. So, I mean, big writer, big name, with an experience in making interesting, intricate mystery and connecting the dots over the course of the span of the movie. And you can tell that there were probably some connections that they wanted to make, but they didn't necessarily go all the way, because there was an idea that maybe this could continue afterwards. And there's some other things that happen in this movie that allow you to like say, okay, well, this is gonna lead into something else. But I think there's some of the expectations were like, okay, we're gonna see something that connects directly to Alien 1979. It's like, no. Ridley Scott wants to tell this story, and he wants to tell the story about the engineers. He wants to tell the story also about, and we said it before, about synthetics.
Yeah.
About man's creation. So, like, the engineers created humanity. Humanity creates the synthetics. What do the synthetics create? And unfortunately, the representative of the synthetics is David, who is insane.
The creators that supposedly invited us there had maybe other plans. They put these charts around the world, different places, different timelines that all pointed to the same place. So is it like, don't come here, or you should come here? You have to make that choice.
They probably would have wanted humans to come and find them. Now, whether it was fully like benign reasons, maybe they were like, come find us. We want to experiment more on you and see, what we did, what makes you tick. Like, we're going to dissect you like crazy and see if we can mutate you further. Like, maybe that was their intention, but at some point along the way, and maybe, like the 2,000-year-old theory there, it's like, they're not worth it. If they do get into space, they're going to be a disaster. So we might as well eradicate them now and the experiment early, which is what they discover, what Shaw and David both discover is absolutely what they want to do. And the engineer himself, that they wake up, even though we don't get subtitles for the dialogue in the movie theater, there have been plenty of original script information. There's been closed captioning and subtitles that have been added in future editions and things like that show David speaking with the engineer and the responses that the engineer has.
Yeah.
Which he's not happy with seeing humans.
Stand there for a minute while I twist your head off.
I'm going to go punch this 110-year-old man in the face. I don't think he'll make it.
The thing that bothered most people were the two guys that were left behind in the mountain, the bioengineer or bioscientist and the geologist that were there. And they were just like trying to find a place to settle down for the night, coming across all sorts of horrible scenes there about shit that happened 2,000 years ago. They're little scanner devices that they used to map out the whole area, these floating scanner devices, which I thought were pretty cool. They were like little drones that went through all the hallways, mapped it out with lasers, so you could see what the shape and the build was inside the mountain, and it finally comes out that, it's a ship. So in the chamber room that was melting apart with all the vials of secret goo, there was a life form in there. Because they had these little, when they stepped on the earth, they had these little worms, 1-inch worms that came out of the ground. Some of them rolled around in the mutagen. They go into the chamber and they start seeing something swimming in like the liquid and everything. And it looks like a snake, an eel. And so the guy's like, like enthralled with it and everything. He's, oh, come here, baby. You're so beautiful, And the other guys go, don't touch it. Because, that would be the thing not to do, is not to touch it,
Yeah, that was Rafe Spall's character. I think his name was Milburn. Yeah, Milburn, the biologist or whatever.
The other guy is telling him not to touch it. When he finally gets it, I mean, it stands up and looks at him, and I go, that's enough for me. I'd back off. It opens up like a cobra, which to me, like, that's like danger. I wouldn't touch it. And he still goes to touch it anyway, and it wraps around his arm, breaks his arm, goes into his suit, and then penetrates him from the mouth and like an alien facehugger would. And the other guy, when they tried to cut it off, the other guy got splashed with acid and it melted his plastic mask onto his face. You're assuming that they're dead. They come and get them and bring them back, and all sorts of nasty things start to happen to them.
Fifield, they can't find Fifield, but he shows up on his own anyway. And
he showed up on his own, and he did a lot of damage. But when they first get back, Elizabeth's husband, Charlie, is heavily infected with the mutagen. His skin is starting to change. His eyes are starting to change. He's not going to survive it. And they, obviously don't want him to bring that onto the ship. Charlize Theron goes down and takes a flame unit with her and decides she's going to end it here and there. He says his goodbye to his wife because he wants to be killed. He doesn't want to turn into whatever is happening. And so Charlize Theron sets him on fire right in front of her.
It was the right thing to do, to be honest. It was the right thing to do.
And he knew it. Charlie knew it too. So, that's what they did. And when she's in her sad state, and trying to just remember him, and she starts feeling uncomfortable. And she realizes she's pregnant, rushes to the med unit because there's a automatic med capsule there that can do certain procedures on its own. The one thing it's not set up is for women because it was set up for Wayland. And
Yeah.
so it's not set up to deliver a baby or do a cesarean or something. So she has to like quickly program the thing to download that program or whatever it is to do a cesarean. And this machine comes down, cuts her open, and pulls out the ugliest looking Squidward thing you could ever imagine. And she's trapped in there with it, and she's screaming. And I'm feeling like, get out, get out. You know, it's like, this is gross enough.
Yeah. But that was one of the, like, that scene, it's claustrophobic because she's in a tube,
Yeah.
and this thing is just thrashing around, barely being held by, the robotic
Clamps.
arms inside the tube. And she's, she tries to, like, raise it up and slide out the bottom underneath this thing.
With with the big giant hole in her, too.
Yeah, she's got, like, staples that she's had to put on herself. Like, it's crazy. And that's when she finds out Wayland is on board, and Wayland's going to be going back in there. And she's like, "You guys are insane." But I've got to go. I've got to go with you. I have to see this to the end. I have to see what else there is.
Yeah.
And that's where they go to the navigation chamber. David wakes up the engineer. Yeah. And more hell breaks loose.
Yeah, there's one living engineer on that ship. He's in one of the stasis containers or stuff. And David now, after studying the things and watching the self-help videos, knows how to wake him up. The thing you got to say about Elizabeth is she closed the medical thing and to hit the decontamination thing. She doesn't know what happened to the thing that was inside of her. It's in the med unit, and that's all that matters at this. She doesn't want to go back with them, but she needs to find out the answer.
She has to. She has to find out. She knows there's more death to come, but she can't just leave it that way.
So they go, and David wakes up the engineer. He gets out, looks at them. They're very strange. He says something to him in his language. So the engineer goes over to David and gently brushes his face and rips his head off.
Yeah. Because if you're a synthetic, exactly. If you're a synthetic in an alien movie, you're going to end up either with your head ripped off or with
your
torso ripped in half. So it's the fate of every synthetic, or it was up to this point.
So anyway, so Wayland gets smacked across the face, flies across the room. He hits her, she flies across, he hits the console. He goes in and he gets that big giant chair to come out of the floor like it was in the first movie, and climbs into it. She realizes after she saw the star charts what's happening, so she starts telling Idris Elba, who's the pilot of the Prometheus, that you can't let them get away because this is not a warship. I don't have weapons on you because you know what you need to do. And he's like, yeah, I do. And he and his crew did not even discuss it. They knew that this thing couldn't get off the planet because it was headed to Earth. And of course, Charlize Theron is like, I don't want to die in a crash. So they have a portable lab unit with a portable, her living pod. They eject that. She gets into an escape pod and goes out after that. The scene is incredible. They hit the maximum speed engines to go into the engineer starship, and it brings it down. Doesn't do much damage to it that you could see, but it brings it down. And it's havoc. It crashes. They're thrown from it. It starts to land and roll like a donut. Okay.
Where they run in a straight line.
Yes.
As the thing runs towards them. And so I understand that. I also understand that this thing is so big that they can't see where it's not going to be falling. It's so large that running straight, I guess, would work just as well as running off to the side. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? It's a wide
run backwards
ship.
Behind it.
Yeah, try to run towards it and see if you can just keep your eyes on it and see which way you can go. But yeah, Charlize gets a smooshed.
So it's a really great scene. But to get run over by a slow rolling donut, I just was like, all right, but there's got to be a point to this for some reason.
But I do have to say, Charlize Theron, she died in a very okay, kind of way, but she did get to sleep with Idris Elba.
It's just true. If that's your dream.
There was a great part where she's just being snarky to the captain before all the madness happens. She's just sort of like, ugh, this sucks. I hate being here. I want to leave as soon as possible. And he's like, if you just want to sleep with me, you should just say so.
Yeah,
and
if you just want to get laid, he goes, just say so. And she goes, what do you mean? Let's say that. And she goes, I flew millions of miles across the galaxy away from all eligible men to just sleep with you. And he goes, well, If you just want to, just say so. She walks away and he goes, "Hey, Vickers, are you a robot?" And she turns around. And that was the challenge at that point. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like, meet me in my quarters in 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
he's like, okay. Which is funny because if you look at like her character, if you look at Fassbender's David character, they're both children of Wayland, so to speak. Like one might be the biological child, but the other one is his spiritual child. And he is not the most moral person. And clearly, I think most of his personality made it into David instead of Vickers. Although Vickers is kind of, I say she's slimy in her own right, because really her only focus is getting the company and getting the money.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But the exciting conclusion of this movie, where rolling spaceships and exploding laboratories and other spaceships around you are going on, you're now trapped on a desolate planet, right? So the best thing that Elizabeth can do is go into the lab to see what kind of supplies she can dig up, and starts taking down batteries and things and stuffing it in her bag. And then she hears noises, and she goes over to the door, and she sees that cephalopod thing with the 4 tentacles is now like 8 feet tall and 12 feet wide. And
that came out of her?
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
Now, in the extended ending, it's much better ending, I think, than what they showed us. But the extended, if you get to see the director's cut and the alternate ending, it was really good. It was a little action-packed. It was a little bit more of a battle for her to get away from the engineer who shows up. And in the battle, in the course of action, she's not going to win this against a guy that's, twice her size and stronger than her. They're in front of the med lab door, and she opens the door, and that big giant cephalopod creature grabs him, ties him up in the tentacles, lays him down, and then has a really ugly second jaw type of thing on a tongue or on a tube, and goes down his throat like a giant face hugger and pumps him up full of whatever it is. And so now he's impregnated with whatever that thing is going to give him. When she goes out, she hears David calling from the ship. His head is still alive. And she goes, "Oh, do you have to help me?" And she goes, "Well, why would I want to help you?" And he says, "Because I know how to fly their ships, and there's more of them on those here." And she goes, "We can get home." And she goes, "Well, I'll help you, but we're not going home." So she gets him, puts him in a bag, gets him on a spaceship, and the last shot you see is her taking off the planet with him, and her voice, saying that all their members are dead from Prometheus, and we are going to find them. We're going to go to where they are. So that was the end of Prometheus and led into whatever was going to happen next. But there's also a follow-up scene of the alien busting out of the engineer's chest. And it was not what people wanted to see. It was an alien. It sort of had a pointed head. They call it the Deacon. That's what they call that particular species of alien. And it was big, but that's the only one. It was left there on the planet. It was just an epilogue type of thing to say, yeah, this still happens. And no one got the payoff that they wanted, which was, this is supposed to be an Alien prequel. Why aren't we? How did they get to LV? Did they go to LV 426? What's going on? So there was way, way, way too many questions after that. The big criticism was, where were the aliens in it? There was like one or two. And so Ridley Scott, after hearing all the fanboys and everything, decided, well, my next movie is going to have a lot more aliens in it, if that's what you want. And that never does a movie service when you listen to everybody and just do it, without the right intentions. But Prometheus in its own is a really good movie to look at. You don't have to watch it and then watch any other alien movie to understand what's going on. It's a complete story. And like I said, it's visually beautiful to look at. The music is also good in the soundtrack. A lot of callbacks to the original soundtrack, some new stuff that identifies it as a different movie. But it's all done very, very well. Visuals are really good. The CGI is really good. They did a really great job putting the movie together. It was just a bit of a misfire.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's a really great film, standalone sci-fi horror film. It hits a lot of buttons. It's got, beautiful set pieces. You've got the high-tech sci-fi stuff that everybody loves. You've got some really gory moments and some really scary moments. And actually, speaking of, what was your favorite moment here? Was it the medbay thing, or?
Yeah, the medbay thing, I think, to me was the scariest, because it was most of the alien movies, it's very intrusive, right? The alien is very forceful, rapish. And in this particular case, her particular alien was not born of that. It was born of a sincere gesture of
consensual.
Yeah, consensual lovemaking with your spouse. So that was the horror of it, was what happened to her, thinking that, well, I'm pregnant now. That's a miracle, to what it was inside of her. Just that feeling alone. I mean, if they didn't even show me it, I mean, I would probably be still upset about it. The visual of it, the thing that they pull out of her, the fluids, the color of her, it was probably one of the most horrifying things that I've ever seen, including the chest burster in Alien, the original Alien, because, that's a lot of blood. Yeah. This was much more intrusive, and it made me squirm. It definitely made me squirm. So,
yeah. And I would say, because again, in terms of the horror of it, like that scene is definitely one of the most terrifying. I would say my favorite part about it is probably when they first breach that chamber. You have that giant human-looking head that's just that carved head.
Yeah.
And they're looking around. There's all those vials that are there. And, you know that those are filled with something, especially when they walk by and it starts sweating. And you're like, oh, okay, this is not good. You're just waiting for something to happen. And that constant buildup of tension as they're looking across the walls and you see the murals with what looks like an alien mother. It's just dread.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of tension in a movie because, you're just waiting for something to break. And the cool thing about this is that it doesn't instantly pay off. It doesn't pay off right away. It pays off a little bit later when you see what's been happening as the goo comes out. So I would say that was probably my favorite dread in this movie, dreadful part of the film.
I'm thinking she's like, let's bag the head, and I'm like, what? Let's get the fuck out of here. Look what's happening.
Out of here. This place is a tomb. Get out.
She started looking at the ceiling, and you see the ceiling started sweating the black mutagen. And she goes, I think we set something off in the atmosphere here. We need to go. And then there's that, the storm, the other things that are happening. There was a very tense moment there, tense moments there to get back to the ship.
So I would say like Prometheus. I really like this movie. I like it as a standalone. I do like it a lot as part of the Alien franchise because it fills in some aspects of society that we didn't get up to that point. I mean, from Alien to Aliens and Alien 3, which was very insular, and then of course Alien Resurrection at that point, which was the previous movie to this.
Yeah.
Not counting AVP, but that one was just in a spaceship that was so far in the future, and it was so stylized that you didn't really get a sense of like who anybody was in that future, like who are people.
Yeah.
And why is it important that they survive this? But this was good. I did enjoy it, and I absolutely understand the criticisms with the writing.
I understand the criticisms. I don't bear anybody any grudges on the criticisms. There were definitely, I don't know if I call them plot holes, just bad choices that people made in the movie, but I think there's the human aspect of things like that too. Like I said, if you hire people like, in Jurassic Park, it's Dr. Malcolm, he's the chaos theory, wonderkind, and he's a rock star and stuff like that, bound to do almost anything that he wants to do. These people there kind of felt the same way about themselves. You picked me to come here for my expertise. No religious nut is going to tell me what to do.
And I think this is probably a good time to sort of signing off on the Prometheus before we get into the meat of the follow-up to it in Covenant. I'm gonna say thank you right now. Thank you for coming over and talking about Prometheus with me in the Bear Cave. And I will see you very soon to talk more about Covenant. You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror. And if you haven't seen Alien Prometheus, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, it is streaming on HBO Max or for sale digitally or on physical media. And Vince, if listeners would like to get in touch, how would they do that?
You would reach me at foxmolder803@gmail.com.
Perfect. And if you want to follow the Bear Cave of Terror on Blue Sky and Instagram, you can do so at Bear Cave of Terror, all one word, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. List of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about Prometheus. or more about Covenant in our part 2. But just remember, don't let your synthetic watch classic Oscar-winning performances from great British actors. It'll make them a little bit loopy.
Is that tobacco? Is that tobacco in your respirator?
Yeah, sure. Tobacco.
On behalf of scientists everywhere, I am ashamed to count you amongst us, Fairfield, really.